This morning, former President Donald Trump was denied by a Washington, D.C. federal appeals court, which unanimously ruled against the former president's claim that he cannot be prosecuted for trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election due to presidential immunity. Yes, this case has been dragging on. It's been dragged out. But as a reminder, as of August of last year, Trump is facing several criminal charges, including conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. You guys remember that, right? That happened on January 6th. Obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. Now, this case is the first of its kind because no other president before Donald Trump ever attempted to overturn the results of our democratic process. And the judges, two of whom were appointed by Joe Biden and one who was appointed by George H.W. Bush, wrote that for the purpose of this criminal case, former President Trump has become citizen Trump with all of the defenses of any other criminal defendant. But any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution. So I want to stop right here, Cenk, and kind of suss this out a little more, because what they're arguing here is, listen, what you engaged in was not something that you did as part of your official duties as president of the United States. This was you as a candidate not liking the results of the election and engaging in unlawful means to overturn the results of the democratic process. Am I understanding their decision here correctly, or at least that portion of their explanation?
Yeah, that portion for sure. They ruled against him in 18 different ways, and they said this is crystal clear. And one of the interesting things about it is that they also said, well, we have to rule against you by your own logic. So you said that if you are impeached, for example, then you could be convicted in a criminal case as president. Your main logic for why you should not be tried was, well, there'll be a chilling effect on all presidents if they know they can be convicted later. But you yourself admit that you can be convicted, even in your own argument, if you're impeached. So it would be the same chilling effect. So your argument is basically moot, useless. So he had no, as always, guys, whenever he goes to court, he melts because he never has any good arguments, never has any evidence. And this court was crystal clear and very forceful in saying, no, of course the president cannot be immune from all laws. And I don't know if you're about to get to it, but the one case example that they used that was so stunning was the judges had asked Trump's team, could the president assassinate a political opponent with SEAL Team 6? And as long as his own party cleared him in the Senate hearings after impeachment, in other words, the Senate didn't convict, would he not be able to be charged? And they said, yeah, he wouldn't be charged. As long as his own party clears him, he could murder any political opponent he likes. And the court was like, no. That's not right.
So I remember listening to the audio of that exchange with Donald Trump's legal representation, and I thought it was kind of hilarious because the lawyer hesitated, and it was because he knew that he had to say yes, but it was such an insane argument to make that there was hesitation in his agreement that he does believe that. I don't think he genuinely believes that, but of course he's defending Donald Trump in this case. But I want to give you some more excerpts of their decision. They write that we cannot accept former President Trump's claim that a president has unbounded authority to commit crimes that would neutralize the most fundamental check on executive power, the recognition and implementation of election results. We cannot accept that the office of the presidency places its former occupants above the law for all time thereafter. So again, another reference to the fact that what Trump had engaged in, again, was not part of official presidential duty. So look, there are instances of presidents engaging in criminality. And what I mean by that is look at the Bush administration and the war crimes that the Bush administration engaged in. Now, theoretically, if the Obama administration wanted to pursue charges against the Bush administration for those war crimes or the illegal wiretapping of Americans, he could have pursued that, but that would have been a difficult hill to climb. But mostly because those actions were taken as part of official US duties or official presidential actions. Again, what Trump had engaged in was not part of his presidential responsibilities. It was part of him as a candidate not liking the results of the election and attempting to unlawfully overturn the results of that election. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yeah, so to that point, Anna, he said not only are official acts immune, but things that are on the quote unquote outer perimeter of official acts are also immune. So he said, him arguing that he had won the election as a candidate while technically still being president was on the outer perimeter of his duties as president of the United States. The court said, well, that's irrelevant because outer perimeter or inner perimeter, no president is immune from the law, even if it's an official act. So if the official act is Navy SEAL Team 6, take out Joe Biden, that is not, or Donald Trump, by the way, no matter who the president is, that might be an official act, but it is not immune from criminal prosecution. Now, Anna, you were going somewhere with that, and Trump is going somewhere with that. That is an interesting question, which is, so for example, when Barack Obama ordered the execution of Anwar al-Awlaki, he did it without getting a court order, and
he was a U.S. citizen who
was a U.S. citizen. By the way, his children were later murdered in 2 other bombings. They were also US citizens. Those are claimed to be accidents, but the US said, no, Awlaki himself, we meant to kill, and we don't care. We did it extrajudicially, which is totally unconstitutional, and I would argue totally illegal. So could Obama be prosecuted for that? Well, that would send chills down Washington's spine and all Democrats' spine. Wait a minute. But that's a Muslim we're murdering. That's totally okay, isn't it? And that's abroad. No, it's not okay. And so if he could do it abroad, he could do it internally, yes. So the presidents, whether it's Obama or George W. Bush for torture, warrantless wiretapping, etc., would still be liable for those crimes. Well, I know Washington hates that, but I don't hate it at all. I think that Bush shouldn't have done the torture. It was illegal, or the warrantless wiretapping, and Obama shouldn't have done an extrajudicial killing. And I don't care that he's the beloved angelic Barack Obama, according to the Democratic establishment.
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now.
Yeah, look, I obviously agree with you on that. Like you were frustrated by Obama wanting to look forward and not pursue any investigation into what the Bush administration had done during their 2 terms. I was also frustrated. But there's also, in my opinion, a decent argument about the chilling effect that would have on a presidency. You could respond with, well, just don't break any laws. And I would agree with that argument. But my whole point in bringing all of this up is pursuing criminal charges against a sitting president as he's engaging in official duty as president is just much more difficult, right? There's a lot more protection for the president versus someone who's running for re-election as a candidate and then engages in criminality as a candidate as opposed to a president. And that's what Donald Trump did here. Now the judges also-
can I just say,
sure.
I think the distinction there is not one that's legal, but one that's practical. So if you went to go either impeach or criminally prosecute a president for a drone bomb that went awry or that you had issues with, boy, it would be incredibly hard to convict on either impeachment or in a criminal case. So that's your check for, yeah, it was official duties, and that's why they're never going to get a conviction and would probably never bring the case, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. But yes, you can't just say, hey, official act. What if al-Awlaki was inside the United States? Could they have just gone and shot him in the head, assassinated him in the street, and dragged him out and go, okay, yeah, so what? I didn't have a trial. I just murdered him. So what? No, you can't do that. So there needs to be a check on official action as well.
Yeah, I agree. So finally, I just want to note that the judges believe that there is a public interest for this case to move forward. They write that we conclude that the interest in criminal accountability held by both the public and the executive branch outweighs the potential risks of chilling presidential action and permitting vexatious litigation. Moreover, past presidents have understood themselves to be subject to impeachment and criminal liability. So the possibility of chilling executive action is already in effect. And that's been Trump's main argument against this prosecution. He has repeatedly insisted that if presidents are not entitled to complete immunity, then as soon as their term is up, they will face legal attacks from the opposition party. So he kind of lost his mind about this decision by the appeals court, and does plan on appealing the decision that was made by this appeals court. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's not looking good for Trump. I do think that this case is going to move forward. The question is, what's the timing? Certain things keep getting delayed, and if Democrats are hoping that these cases will sink Donald Trump's candidacy, so their preferred, incredibly vulnerable Joe Biden wins a second term. I think that they're really risking a lot by hoping that, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, so two things to look out for on the timing. Number one, is the Supreme Court going to take the case, and how quickly are they going to judge it? So they could immediately say, we're not taking the case. And what that means is that the DC Circuit Court ruling stands, and he is not immune, and that is the law of the land, okay? That is the decision they should make, according to every lawyer in the country, because otherwise the president is above the law. It was always a preposterous argument to make. But if the Supreme Court wants to kind of rig it in favor of Donald Trump, what they would do is they would take the case and sit on it. And they would wait for a couple of months, thereby making sure that they cannot get a conviction before the election. And remember, in this case, if Trump becomes president, he doesn't even have to pardon himself if the case is not over. He just immediately drops the case as the head of the federal government. So, because this is a federal case. So we'll see if the Supreme Court's going to play this fair and honest, or if they're going to try to help Trump by delaying the ruling. It would be shocking if they agreed with Trump. That's almost not even possible. So the timing is what makes the difference. And of course, we wouldn't have been in any of this mess if the world's worst attorney general, Merrick Garland, hadn't sat on this case for 2.5 years for no reason at all.